Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast. That is, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back on Polls You Go with Kate O'Dell and Kim Strassel. And let's turn to the House Republicans, who also had a not-so-stellar week. And let's listen to Speaker Mike Johnson explain why they have struggled so much, both to pass even an aid bill for Israel alone and impeach Alejandro Mayorkas, the DHS secretary.
We're governing here. Sometimes it's messy. The framers anticipated that you would have a system where people with very different philosophical viewpoints that come from different parts of the country and different constituencies would have different ideas on how to resolve their problems. But what they also anticipated is that we'd be able to get in a room and arm wrestle over public policy and come to consensus to move the ball forward for the most people. That is what's happening here. You're seeing the messy sausage making, the process of democracy play out. I don't think that this is a reflection on the leader. It's a reflection on the body itself and the place where we've come in this country. Look, the nation is divided. We lament that, right? The difference is the chasm between the two parties right now is wider than it's ever been.
Well, I do agree, Kim, with Speaker Johnson that it's really not a reflection so much on the leader. It's a reflection on the body. But I disagree with the speaker when he says we're governing. They're doing the antithesis of governing. They are not governing. And far from moving the ball forward, they're moving the ball backward. So they're just not doing anything that actually gets done. We can talk about the Mayorkas impeachment fiasco. But the stunning vote for me was House Republicans could not pass this week a aid bill for Israel, which overwhelming members of Republican Party support. And the reason they couldn't is because they have two Freedom Caucus members, I think it is, two, on the Rules Committee, who usually you would think would be there to support the majority party's priorities. In this case, they can't get the spending bill through the Rules Committee, so that means they have to go on the suspension calendar, which is jargon for they have to get two-thirds support for the bill. So the bill failed. So you have the narrow majority in the House anyway, and they now have managed to make things more difficult for themselves by making it a requirement of two-thirds support. So calling this a gang that couldn't shoot straight is really generous.
Yeah. Once again, I'll be meaner than you, Paul. I actually think this is both a failure of governing, but also of the speaker for this reason. I mean, in terms of basic member management, let's be clear. When they were going to do the Mayorkas impeachment, they have understood for a long time that three of their members, Mike Gallagher, Tom McClintock, and Ken Buck, were no's on this. That was not enough to get them over the finish line. And yet they brought the legislation, the bill, the resolution to the floor anyway. You don't do that unless you want to be humiliated. And they seem to think that they could just go lean on one or a number of these and all would be well. It's just basic mismanagement. On the governing point, I think that, we had a great op-ed by Mike Gallagher in our paper explaining his no vote on that, explaining why this would open a Pandora's box for retribution in the future with Democratic House going after Republican cabinet secretaries, whether or not this was actually something that anyway counts as criminal behavior, which has been the standard in the past for an impeachment of a cabinet secretary. Why are Republicans putting so much effort into this only to have it fail? When, yes, as you say, the things that really matter that are about governing, like this Israeli bill, they've now boxed themselves into this situation where they can't come up with a piece of legislation that they feel that they can move through the Rules Committee. So now the standard, as you note, is even higher, and there's no chance of getting there. Weirdly, because in part you have House Freedom Caucus members who don't like the new iteration of this bill, which didn't do anything to offset the Israeli spending, unlike a prior version of it. The groundwork for all this was set all the way back in the spring when you saw Kevin McCarthy need about 3 months to pull his caucus together for one bill, the debt ceiling agreement. That was tenuous. And let's just be clear, that was the high point of anything that they have done. I just don't see anything else improving either because they've now just divided into warring camps.
Yeah, it's really quite something to behold. By the way, that debt ceiling bill you mentioned, the Congressional Budget Office came out this week with its semi-annual budget outlook document. And what it showed is that debt ceiling deal is going to reduce the deficits by $1.4 trillion. So that actually accomplished something in terms of spending restraint, whereas nothing else this Congress has done has. And certainly the Freedom Caucus types and others have not. So, Kate, one of the things that's unfortunate here, though, is that a member like Michael Gallagher, who is acting on principle, and Tom McClintock, but Gallagher in particular, seems to be coming in for an awful lot of abuse because he decided he just didn't like the impeaching Mayorkas for the reasons Kim mentioned and others. And in this age of Trumpian retribution, when you don't go along with the priorities of the crowd for whatever reason, you can be punished and they want to drum you out of the party.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And it really is all the more remarkable. I agree with Kim that I do think it doesn't hold up to just say, well, this isn't totally a reflection on who's in charge of the House. I mean, if you think about it, they have the votes to impeach Mayorkas, and they're planning to do so again and have another vote when Scalise is back in town.
He's the majority leader.
He's out for cancer treatment. So they have the votes to impeach Mayorkas. They simply miscounted or didn't think the Democrats would make an effort to get one member who had had surgery onto the floor. They should have known that in such a high-profile vote, of course they were going to make a big effort to roll that guy in, which is what they did. And so it is just even more bizarre to expose your members to this kind of heavy incoming when you're just going to say, whoops, we'll try this again next week because we have the underlying votes. So I do think that one was quite a fumble to put that on the floor with no idea of the underlying dynamics. It's more than just member management. I don't think that would have happened under Kevin McCarthy, who I don't think would bring something to the floor not knowing if he had it in the bag. So I do think it reflects poorly, not just the House as a body.
And it is Johnson's other point was that, well, the parties are very polarized. Well, there's no question about that. But that puts a premium on Republican unity to get anything done. You can't do anything without 218 votes. And the problem that Republicans have is that they're shooting at each other, right? They're shooting each other in the back. You can't move forward without somebody like Matt Gaetz trying to take you out. So it's very difficult to govern in those circumstances. All right, I'm going to finish today with a listener letter. It's from a gentleman named Rob. It says, let's review the last couple of days. The Republicans try to impeach a cabinet member and fail on providing aid to Israel and Ukraine, and won't even consider a border deal they used to want. And why? Because they are ruled by Trump. At least a significant faction in members and numbers are. When will you endorse Nikki Haley? Well, Rob, we don't endorse candidates, and we haven't since 1928. As Kim knows, I was alive then. We endorsed Hoover in 1928. That didn't turn out well, and we were just all essentially shell-shocked after that, so we haven't endorsed anybody since. Now, more seriously, it's true, we haven't endorsed anybody since 1928, and we found that that's useful since what we want to do is inform our readers about what the candidates stand for, who they are, what the stakes are, and then they're smart enough to be able to make up their own mind about who to vote for. You don't need us to tell you that. So that's why we don't endorse candidates. But thank you for writing, and we hope you do find Potomac Watch informative. So thank you, Kim. Thank you, Kate. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back tomorrow and every day with Potomac Watch.